Welcome to today's episode of the Fit for Fortune podcast. I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Alex Gates. Alex and I go way back. We started working at a large personal training company on the same exact day, maybe 7 years ago now. We were two tall, skinny newbies and got a lot of hate for it at that company. 7 years later, Alex is huge, physically as well as in his achievements. He's a physique expert at Procoach, which is Callum Raystrick's company, who we also did an episode with before. Listen to that if you haven't yet. As well as a co-founder at the Institute of Coaching Mastery, a platform coaching coaches. He's also the uncrowned king of eating insane amounts of calories, of wearing shorts in any weather, of Yorkshire pudding consumption, and of the posterior chain, so anything ham, glute, and back related, and an all-around awesome, pure good human. Today, I'm mostly hoping to learn more about his own journey and how his physique changed over the years and all the lessons around training and nutrition that he acquired while putting on 100 pounds, so 45 kilos, which is insane. When we worked together, we didn't understand basically anything the other person said because my English comprehension as well as pronunciation was so bad back then. So this is virtually our first ever actual conversation. I'm praying to God I will understand more this time, but if my responses don't make sense, then you will all know why. So Alex, let's take it all the way back to that company we worked at. Why were we small back then? I know my answer, but I'm curious about yours.
Sorry, I've got to say that was the greatest introduction I've ever heard. God, why were we small back then? Yeah, because it's mad, isn't it? That was what, 2017, so 7 and a bit years ago when we were... I can picture us sitting at the same table in the reception of this gym in complete silence because we both try and say something and then the other one would just nod and we wouldn't know what to say. They were the good days. I remember I showed someone how to use an iPad, but actually I don't think that was you. I think that might have been someone else.
At least I could deal with that. I just didn't understand anything we talked about.
Yeah, you couldn't type anything on it that made sense, but you could understand how to turn it on, which was better than some people could. Why were we small? I think we were young. That's what it was. We were young natties at that point. And no one else was either of those two things. So that's why we were small in comparison. I think, you know what's interesting? I don't know how you feel about this. For me, that was the perfect environment to go into where you're challenged and you're tested and made to feel even smaller than you know that you are. But equally at the same point, it's like, yeah, but oh well, like throw me at the deep end and let's see what happens type thing. Because I remember we had it where we did our initiation together, where we both got absolutely annihilated. And I was just thinking about that this morning, the sweet spot, because I think we even started at the same point, because we did it was basically an extended giant set, didn't we? Where it was 25 minutes of trying not to vomit. And then for me, an hour and a half of trying not to vomit, watching you attempting to eat a rice cake, which was the best thing in the world.
Do you start every morning thinking about your initiation?
Oh yeah, I cry every morning thinking about it. And yeah, I can just picture us sitting outside and you nibbling a rice cake and you'd be like, David, are you okay? And you've been, sorry? I was like, are you all right? Sorry? I just nodded.
Did you actually puke as well? Or did you just have to go upstairs and like lay down or something?
No, so mine was, so I finished the sled drag prowler push and I made the horrific mistake.
Essential bodybuilding movements, by the way.
Yeah. I've grown so much. That's actually the reason I put on 100 pounds. So I've just did those relentlessly ever since. I remember I made the mistake of sitting down. I was like, I'm on my arse here. Like I'm gonna sit down, like lean back against the wall. But then the problem was I got stuck because you know when you're at a point where you got so much lactate in your legs, and I was like, if I go to stand up or even move, I'm going to be sick because lactate buildup is so heavy. And I was like, well, I'm between a rock and a hard place here. So I think I was lying down, actually, to start with, not sitting down. I think I was lying down in front of the physio at the time's office, or sports chiropractor, sorry. Tell me off. Sports chiropractor's office. He had patients coming in who had to step over me to get into said office. So that was 30 minutes of lying down there. Then I managed to sit up for 30 minutes where I was like still on the edge, bucket next to me. There's actually a picture that our good friend Tony took of me with this. They gave me the tiniest little thimble bucket. And I was like, if anything comes out, like that thing's me full. This isn't going to be good. And then I managed to stand up and get outside. And obviously we had stairs to get out of the gym, which was
Of course.
Like I needed a stair lift type thing to try and get me out. And then I think I sat outside for 30 minutes. And then I think you've been in the back office the entire time. And then we just went home because we were done for the day. So we were like, well, that's just a normal Wednesday afternoon finished.
Yeah, so for the listener, this was kind of completely pointless, but a very beneficial way of just initiating us in the way of training us super, super hard so we can sort of not replicate the same thing, but to push our thresholds and train clients sufficiently hard, which again, we never had to train clients like this, but I think it was beneficial in a way of setting a ceiling.
Yeah, especially training ourselves, because we were trained by the other juniors, weren't we? Obviously, you start as a junior, the other boys were the ones that put you through a session, and then you're like, well, this is the level I can push to now. Great, and even if it wasn't from a beneficial for work perspective, like it was good for just you and I to be able to be like, oh,
sure,
like this is how hard we can train. Like I think I'd love to hear a compilation over the last 7 years of training noises that you and I have made, where it's just like horrific sounds.
I'm not very proud of that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, we both are, and I think that's where it came from. I can remember being on the pendulum for a good 5 minutes, just dying from about rep 3, and just still moving, and like lads just here, just shouting at you in your face. And just basically just screaming and crying, and then fell out the machine.
Knocking your knees out whenever you lock it down.
Oh, of course, yeah, 100%. We actually, that being said, I feel a bit cruel saying this because I actually then was responsible for new people that came in a bit later on. I would normally train with them, where it wasn't an official role, but I'd put them through a session, or if they were training on the gym floor, it's like, right, I'd go and just shout at them type thing. And we did a thing where you put a band around the stopper. Not the stopper,
yes, the locking mechanism.
And I'd just stand there and hold it, and then someone else would be just shouting at them, and they wouldn't be able to finish the set until we thought they'd finished the set.
Plus seat belt, tying them into there as well.
Of course. It gets a bit weird when you think about it out of context, don't you? But at the time, best thing in the world. But yeah, it's mad to think that was so long ago. Obviously, we had a little catch up off air before this about what's happened since then, and it's been a bit of a ride, hasn't it?
Do you think that sort of intensity that we kept training throughout that whole time we were there, not just the initiation, but the whole few years that we spent there, do you think that was beneficial?
For me, yes. For clients, no. I learned a huge amount of lessons there. I think I look back at it, and I'm very lucky to have started at the time that I did, where the caliber of training was unbelievable. The atmosphere on the gym floor is incredible. There was a proper team there, but it was a team that you had to earn the respect of every other member first before you actually were part of that team, which I think some people would not like. But for me personally, I was like, this is amazing. Like, it's not just you turn up and you've got a group of mates that you're working together. It's you turn up there, you work hard, you do the things that you should be doing, and then you're almost like allowed a seat at the table type thing, which I've always, like, my headspace has always been very much like, great, like that's my motivation to get to that sort of level. And then training wise, the same thing. Like I find it really interesting. I've spoken to a few people about this recently with where the industry is now compared to where it was then. And obviously a lot of stuff has changed. A huge amount of stuff happened with people training at home during COVID and lockdown and stuff like that. And we've kind of had this weird shift where, for me, the way that we were taught to train at that point, just obliterate yourself and your hard work will show itself, has kind of been replaced now by, every time I go on Instagram, I just want to throw my phone against the wall where you've got a dude doing a single arm pull down with 6 kilos and saying that you can't do a barbell row because there's too much fatigue. And it's like, no, like, learn the other side first, learn how to train, learn what too much fatigue actually is, and then you can start to rate the other bits, which is obviously, like, as I kind of moved along, like FGP, went to the MuscleMentors, went to kind of where we are now. It's almost like being able to find a blend of both, where it's the ability to have the kind of on paper knowledge of this is how to set up programming, how to set up an exercise, how to challenge muscle in X way, but also you just know how to work damn hard. And I don't think I would have learned that if I hadn't have been there being shouted at for 2.5 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's like same as with reps in reserve, right? Like maybe you want to keep 0 to 2 reps in reserve, but if you never establish what 0 reps in reserve looks like, feels like, then how are you going to gauge where you are?
Yeah, 100%. That's a really good way, a really, really good way of describing it. It's like, well, and that only comes from doing it, like doing the practical side of things. Like you look at online coaching now being such a big thing. Like we, within the ICM, we teach a lot of trainers, and a lot of the time we're saying to them, it's like, just go and train. Like, don't ask us a question of, is this exercise better than this? Go do them. Like that's the way you learn. Otherwise, you've got no idea. You don't know how to cue a dumbbell bench press if you've never done a dumbbell bench press, because you don't know what's going to be happening. And that carries across everything. So
back to being skinny back then, you think that it was just a low training age? Do you also consider yourself a hard gainer?
To an extent, yes. So for the listeners, I'm 6'5", so I've always been tall and lanky and looked skinny because like my limbs are longer than most people's doorway, essentially. Yeah. So I think I was definitely slighter out of the two of us. I was definitely the lankier one. And then compared to the rest of the boys, it was like, I looked like someone's son, basically like someone's son who'd been put on a stretching machine. But I think a hard gainer, yes, to an extent where I started in a position where I needed to build more muscle than other people. But I don't really think hard gainer is a term that should be used for anyone, because but the way I see it is like, when people will ask a question, they'll be like, oh, how do I get X amount of calories down as a hard gainer? It's like, well, you just eat. If you need to eat more than
same as a non-hard gainer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you need to eat more than other people, then so be it. Like, it doesn't really make a big difference. You just do what you need to do. If anything, I almost like having come from that skinny background, because like, as we're going to come on to, like when you do then build tissue and you do put X amount of muscle onto your frame, you've then got the change in physique being so much more dramatic, but also you learn so much more. I'd rather learn how to build muscle from someone who's built X amount rather than someone who's always had X amount and then maybe ultimately be bigger, but they haven't actually had to go through the ringer quite so much. So yeah, the ultimate kind of ectomorph from that side of things. I think yeah, when I started UP, I was 6'5", 85 kilos. Got told to diet, obviously.
You were 85 kilos back then?
Yeah, I think so.
Damn.
85, 86, got told to diet, obviously. Probably dieted for the first year I was there. Did a shoot at 78, I think. And yeah, for the listeners, like, imagine someone 2 meters tall being 78 kilos, like, I was like ribs and skull was pretty much.
Yeah, you were skinny back then, yeah.
The shape was there. I had decent shape to me, but there was just nothing else. The shape came from my bones rather than anything else.
I think a lot of people don't realize that when you're taller and you have just like longer limbs and everything, in order to get the same proportions, so like width or thickness to length ratio, you just need to build more muscle, right? Like what people don't necessarily realize is a lot of these fitness influencers you see on Instagram that have like insane physiques, they're like 160 centimeters tall.
Yeah, they're always going to look thicker and more muscular and more dense because they're just tiny. But I always think, I don't know if you have the same thing, I'd always rather, say if I've spoken to someone on social media or they know me through social media, which not many people do because I'm not that important. But then if you meet someone in person, I'd always rather someone be like, oh, you're bigger in person, you're taller in person, whatever it might be, rather than being a little bit disappointed and a little bit like, oh, you look big in that picture in good lighting when you had a pump, but now I've actually seen you, you're not what I thought you'd be.
So you don't think being a hard gainer is a real thing, right? It's just you might need to eat a little bit more or you might need to build a bit more muscle.
Yeah, gaining is hard. Everyone's a hard gainer. Like if building muscle was easy, everyone would be enormous, realistically. I said some people just need to spend more time doing it. But I think that's hard. I think it's just being realistic. Mm-hmm. My journey was years and years. So it's like, well, that's what you need to do. That's what you got to do.
Let's go into your journey then. So you were 85 kilos, spent a year losing 7 kilos to do a photo shoot. 78.
To be fair, I think I've exaggerated that. I think obviously you diet when you first get there for no apparent reason. So I think then, I can't remember if I then had a period of time where I was allowed to eat at maintenance. So I think I got an extra 3 grams of potato or something like that.
You fat pig.
Exactly. Yeah. I was like, oh, rebounds. I've not done one of these before. And then did a shoot with our good mutual friend, Rob McGeary. We did that together in 2018. I think about October time, 2018. Because that was our like next step in showing that we could walk the walk. And then, I think I was 78 at my lowest, maybe 79, 80 on shoot day. I was in decent condition, but I just didn't have enough muscle to look lean because there wasn't enough underneath. Like loved doing it, granted. That was the first time I'd pushed to that point. I remember walking 20,000 steps a day, having to get out and do a lot of stuff, like being super militant with food, which was stuff I was already doing, but just taking it to that next level. And I was like, this is awesome. But then also was very excited for what came next, to the point of actually then getting large, because that's always, I think as a skinnier guy naturally, you're used to being smaller. You always want to be bigger. Like you'd much rather fill a t-shirt and fill a hoodie and be that more imposing physique rather than permanently lean, as someone who hasn't really been lean growing up would normally veer towards.
Exactly. Anyone that's a little bit chubbier growing up always just want to stay leaner and are afraid of gaining any body fat. And us that are just like lived most of our lives skinny, we just want to get massive, even if it's a little bit fatter.
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, I can suck in a belly as long as my arms look good in the t-shirt. That's why vacuums were invented, to be able to hold those.
Yeah. So you started working with Callum at that point, right? When you started bringing your food up and getting massive?
Yeah, so I started getting massive. I never quite got there. But so I knew of Cal at that sort of time. Because I'd never dieted down to that point before, I was then obviously, from putting food back in and kind of returning to normality afterwards, was kind of suddenly a bit like, oh, my stomach doesn't really like eating food here. Like I started to get a bit bloated. I started to get a few like digestive issues, nothing severe, but just naturally those things that start to happen post-diet, and then are only ever going to continue as you continue increasing food up if you don't address them. And at the time, I think Cal and Luke had just started the MuscleMentors. I think he'd just transitioned from CR Physique to the MuscleMentors. They obviously, the initial podcasts were a lot around things like gut health. Both of them were enormous, but also educated. And I was like, oh, that really resonates with me. Like I want to learn from someone that's my sort of height, 1 inch shorter, just for the record. I'm an inch taller than Cal. Just going to drop that in there.
Wait, you're 1 inch shorter?
No, God, no, don't do it like that. No, I'm an inch taller than Cal. He's bigger than me at the minute, and unfortunately better looking, but I'm taller than him, so I've got that. So reached out to Cal. I think that was about a month post shoot, or we started working together. He started coaching me, and we basically mapped it out as, rather than let's grow now to diet again at some point down the line. It's like, let's just see how big we can get. I've done the diet side of things now. I ticked the box in my junior year and got through all that stuff. So I had a bit more flexibility and freedom in terms of what I then wanted to do with my physique. And it was, let's get big. Let's explore that. I'd never been big. I've got a sporting background. I'd always been skinny. So it's like, right, let's get in on bodybuilding. And I think then for the next 3 years, probably went as in on it as anyone has ever done in their life, which sometimes was detrimental, but sometimes was good.
So what did your training, recovery, nutrition, everything look like in those 3 years while you put on how much weight?
So in those 3 years, that probably would have taken us up to about COVID time. So that was my first real time following kind of a consistent bodybuilding setup with everything. So with almost like the relatively standard kind of training setup through the week, I want to say it was something along the lines of push-pull legs, upper lower type split, progressively increasing calories, making sure sleep was being nailed down, which is a big thing that obviously Cal was into at that point, and was kind of starting, crazy as it sounds, like starting to become a bigger thing. I think it was almost becoming cooler to track your sleep and wear blue light blockers and track resting heart rate and HRV in the morning. Like these things now that are so normal, but at that point they weren't really. They were just starting to come into the industry.
It's hard to distinguish if Callum was picking up on these trends earlier or Callum picking up on these trends made it into a thing, because MuscleMentors and Callum were so massive back then, I think, that pretty much anything they touched became the thing. So it was sleep, and then it was digestion, and then they were like, oh, kiwis are a cool fruit, and then all the supermarkets were out of kiwis for years, you know?
And let's use cuffs, and then suddenly everyone started cuffing everything. Cuffing themselves to like just machines for the sake of it.
Leg extensions.
Oh, but I genuinely think, to be fair to him, I think the boys brought that in, and or at least none of this stuff was new realistically, but they made it popular in our kind of world. And then everyone started doing it. Like, even look at now, look at the amount of people who will be following protocols or repeating ideas that were the boys were speaking about 6-7 years ago. It's crazy.
Exactly.
Kind of going back to the original question. So so over those 3 years, so I basically went in on kind of like logbooking my training, progressing training, getting progressively stronger. I'm a very all or nothing person. So like going in on that stuff and doing everything possible to be able to add an extra rep or an extra kilo that captured me more than training ever had before. I actually trained with Rob probably for a year, maybe 80% of our sessions we did together because our schedules just ended up lining up. So we had both of us doing that at the same time, which was so much fun.
Did he get massive as well?
He's always been massive.
That's true.
Yeah.
The ex-weightlifting physique.
One of the most wonderful men you'll ever meet. So he definitely got a lot bigger. He was a little bit older than me, had more of a strength training background. Like he'd done some Olympic weightlifting and stuff. So his frame was there.
I will never forget the upper chest and delts that he has.
Wild, absolutely wild, isn't it? We had that for a year, which is also incredible. I can't actually remember exactly where food intake got to, but I remember up until probably about 2020, like eating ground rice like it was going out of fashion. I remember I lived with two guys, Dan and Umar, at the time in London, so all working together. They were the golden days. Like
Casa the Anabolics.
That's it. Unfortunately, not actual anabolics, but I think Umar had enough testosterone in himself just naturally to.
That's not how I meant it.
Yeah, no, I know.
I just meant it was an overall anabolic environment to be in.
Anabolic house. Yeah, we called it the House of Games, which actually now I say it doesn't sound quite as cool as we thought it was. But I lived with those boys for a little bit, and I remember like super diligent with everything. Like they still take the mick where it'd be 8 o'clock at night, and the boys were like winding down for bed, like they just got back from work, and I'd be there like filling up 5 Tupperwares with ground rice to go with my chicken and veg for the next day, and all this extra stuff. And
that's like such a dream team. All 3 of you are just like excellent at what you do. Umar as well, Dan as well, just so good.
Yeah, and all wired the same. All wired exactly the same. Like again, we spoke about it briefly off air, the kind of people where it's like there's work to do, so you just crack on and do it. Like we all were slightly different in terms of how we did things. Umar would be up at 4 o'clock every morning. You'd wake up at 5 and come down to the smell of mackerel in the kitchen and just be like, what the hell is going on here? Dan would normally work until 9 p.m. and be slightly later in the day, but then would be up with us the next morning, kind of getting into work. I was starting to explore the online side of things, where I had that alongside PT. And yeah, mate, that was one of the best years I've ever had. Like us all living together, just doing exactly the same thing. Umar and I had a stage where we worked 7 days a week, PTing, because we were like, well, we might as well. We'd go in on a Sunday morning, and I think we both had 2 clients that we trained, and then we'd go to the gym ourselves, then go get some food. Like it's just one of those ones where like you had nothing else to like concern yourself.
Just immersed.
Yeah, just doing that, and that's where I've had a huge amount of people that have been very like pivotal to what I've been able to do over the last few years. But yeah, that year kind of set me up. But then, obviously, unfortunately, then Umar left, Dan moved to Mumbai, and I think I left about 2 months afterwards. And yeah, I think it's better that we all did leave at a similar point. But from what I've heard, the team dynamic changed a little bit because we were kind of the guys that'd be there at 6 a.m. each day, like on the gym floor, like chatting away to people. Like I said, we were all wired the same, so we'd all be that sort of setup. And yeah, and I was there able to eat all the food, trying to get as big as the 2 boys. It's still the youngest. I've always been the youngest in these sorts of crowds.
Are you 1 year younger than I am? Are you 29?
30, mate. 30 now.
30, okay.
But I think, I want to say Dan is
a bit older than us, yeah.
Yeah, 5 years older, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't want to do him a disservice. And I think Umar was 2 years older than me. So I was almost at that point, like mid-20s, like the little brother, like just being kind of like pulled along for the ride. And yeah, got to a stage where then left the company, left London at the very start of lockdown. Was at a point then where I was like, right, I feel like I look like a train now. Still was as in love with everything that I was doing. Like was working X amount of hours on the gym floor, was training X amount of times for the week, was not missing anything with food and sleep, etc., etc. And it meant that actually, interestingly, I look back and obviously worked in London for 2.5, 3 years, and people are like, oh, did you go and see this thing? I was like, no, I didn't do anything. I just worked and trained.
Yeah.
Almost like uni type thing. And then left, moved fully online actually. I think it was about 2 weeks before, pretty much the day, 2 weeks before lockdown hit, left my flat in London, moved back up north, went fully online and joined the boys at the MuscleMentors. And then, lockdown hit. So it was very, very lucky timing wise there.
Were you like their second or maybe third to join?
Yeah, third. So I was the fifth member of the team. So it's Cal and Luke. And then about a year before me, Jimbo and Rai, they brought on board as well. And then it was, I came on board as...
Who's Jim?
James Sutton.
Oh, okay, cool.
Sorry, yeah, I called him Jimbo, but
okay.
Suts came on, him and Rai came on at a similar time. I came on, March 2020. So I was about 6 months after leaving in-person work. Did my own thing a little bit and then joined them. Then we hired 2 more guys in the time afterwards to get to where we are now. But then obviously had to then try and train during lockdown, which was fun. With no kit at my flat in Harrogate. I think I had some adjustable dumbbells up to like 20 kilos, some bands.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of bands, yeah.
And it was just tearing my hair out. I even remember actually, first session back where, do you remember after that first bout of lockdown where obviously gyms closed down, stay at home, go outside and do one bit of exercise for 7 minutes during the day or whatever it was. Gyms had just opened back up. I'd never been more excited. And so my local gym at that point, unfortunately, was a pure gym. There wasn't, in Harrogate where I lived, there wasn't a huge amount of gyms and toys to play with. I was like, right, I'm going to go to a pure gym, 24 hours. I'll go in the afternoon, had some work and stuff to get through in the morning. I think I got there at maybe like 3:30, started getting some stuff ready, put my headphones on, and it got to like 3:45. I think I'd done one set of push downs just to kind of get some blood moving and just enjoy being able to use some cables again. And I noticed someone walking over to me, and I was like, what's going on here? And the dude was like, oh, sorry, mate. The gym actually closes in 10 minutes. So we're going to have to ask you to leave in 10 minutes. And I didn't realize because it was COVID, they had limited hours they were open for. It wasn't 24 hours. It had to be staffed. Oh. So I got like 3 sets into my first session back after COVID. I've been dying to do this for however many months. And then got asked to leave and basically cried on the way back to my car and was like, well, that's rubbish. And then obviously I had to navigate COVID through that as well. So that was a good fun time.
Now you work with the MuscleMentors. What are you doing with your physique at this point? Like, where are you with the whole journey?
So I was still growing at that point. I was still in decent nick. Like I hadn't. But with the nature of PT, like it's actually hard to get big because you're moving around so much. Mm-hmm. I actually found it hard to get enough food down during the day. Like it's, especially with working the amount of hours that both of us did, it's damn hard because you've got 30 minutes. And like, well, I've got to try and get X amount of calories into me here and not like a bloated mess on the gym floor afterwards and not feel sick.
Plus our calendar shifts so much as well. Like we don't really have as much consistency in our schedule as most people do.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough. So it was at a point where I was still growing. I think I want to say I was about 90 kilos by this point. So I'd put on a decent amount of weight, like looked good for 90 kilos because I was being active. I was eating good food. I said I've gone so in on stuff. I want to say through the entirety of that weird period of time, like training from home, I put on maybe 5 kilos.
Do I remember you doing like pull-ups on like some scaffoldings in the north or something? Is that you?
Yes. So
because you looked very good back then.
Thank you. That was I was happy with where things were at that point. It was the weird bit. So I used to train at my parents' place. So that's where all like the kit was because they had a garage, had a bit more space, and they were getting their roof done because I think it was COVID, but you were allowed to have people outside working. So they were having their roof replaced or something like that because they're like, well, now's a good chance type thing. And they had scaffolding up in the back of the house, which actually was really useful because I could attach bands to it. Could do other bits and bobs to it. I don't think I did pull-ups on it in the end, but I had that as an option where like in terms of band attachments, it was perfect. I was training twice a day at that point, which is quite fun. Just splitting things just to be able to get out the house. Yeah,
they just invested into roof repairs so you could train. They were like, this guy needs to grow at whatever the cost.
Exactly. Shout out to my parents, be like, can you keep him here for a couple more months? I'm going to lose my attachment. I don't really want to use a lamp post outside the front of the house, which I've had to do for far too long for things like straight arm pull downs. In case it falls over, whatever it might be. But so at that point, was eating a good amount of food, probably 3,500 calories-ish a day, training a good amount, but not really able to push things on just because of circumstances, just because of not being able to train fully. It was almost like a weird time where it was, as I'm sure a lot of people listening to this had, where it was you were able to progress a little bit, but it was more keeping things about maintenance, like keeping yourself almost in that trained state, keeping yourself feeling good about yourself, rather than a time of, I can really transform myself here. But then when COVID ended, I was like, oh, now we're on. That's when the fun started.
Okay, so tell me about that, when the fun started.
So obviously could get back into the gym, which is the most important part because I missed having that. I also, interestingly, as I said, I'd moved from PT to online. So it literally went from being on a fun, busy gym floor, being there from 6 until whatever time in the evening, to then being at home working on my own and being a bit like, I miss this now. Like I miss being able to be out and about. So love being back in the gym and kind of having that as my like switch off to be able to get stuck into. I'd always had a thought in my head about moving to the dark side and kind of going down the assisted route. Obviously, it's something that I'd been exposed to a little bit in the years beforehand. Didn't really know a huge amount, but it was something that I was curious about doing because I was like, well, I coach some assisted guys. I can't coach this if I don't understand what it's all about, like the intricate details. As I said before, like with training, like you don't learn this stuff from a book. You can't.
Just so we're very clear for the listener, when you say assisted stuff, and what substance are we talking about?
Sorry, yes, this is using anabolics, using steroids, so using testosterone, using a couple of other bits and bobs. As it's always been something that I'd wanted to explore. And as I said, I was at a position where I actually was potentially going to do that before lockdown hit, but was like, well, I can't train fully here. Like, what's the point type thing? Like, why would I? So wait until normality came back. I think that was 2021 in the end. So started using anabolics at that time. I think it was about July 2021. And that just helped ramp things up even further. And not in necessarily the traditional sense, but more in my head. I was like, well, I've made this choice now. I'm going to make sure that everything else is now even more perfect than it would be before. Like if I'm doing this and I've made this leap, I'm going to eat even better. I'm going to not miss anything training wise. I'm going to not miss anything sleep wise because I'd be an idiot if I did, type thing. So that then was naturally with that, well, unnaturally, ironically, that was then the time where I could then push up body weight a little bit more because I had more freedom to. Like I was able to gain muscle at a faster rate, kind of really get a decent level of large. And I think that was then an extended push up from maybe 95 to 110 kilos.
Damn, wow.
Over about a year, 18 months. And that's when food got fun. That's when I was eating far too much.
And by fun, you mean not fun at all?
And I mean, yeah, wanting to die type thing, yeah. And I remember, because work was busy again at that stage, naturally. And again, it's different with being online, but it's obviously different challenges to overcome when you're having to eat a lot of food. But I remember getting to points at the end of the day and I was like, how do I get 2,000 calories into me with about 350 grams of carbs, but it's 9 o'clock at night and I don't want to eat anything? So blending up like cream of rice, dates, whole milk, whey, and a few berries because, health. And I was like, well, I'll get that down and being like, well, this is completely mental, but it's what I had to do type thing.
Interesting that you said that once you went on stuff, you felt like you needed to optimize everything even more. Like a lot of people, I feel like, use steroids as sort of like a safety net when they're just like, oh, well, I don't have to pay attention to my training anymore in nutrition because the stuff takes care of me. Whereas in reality, probably if we're trying to take it to the next level, then why not just invest that much more time into recovery and training and nutrition, and then all the extra can come, not just like achieving the same level you could achieve naturally, but now with shit sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't want to just be that guy who got big because he was using things. I was like, I want to get big and I want to use anabolics to help me get even bigger type thing. It's also like, it's again, like I'm a coach, I'm a trainer. Like by this point, I've been doing it 10 years. It's been 12, 13 years now. It's like, I've always been that believer of you do things, you lead from the front and you do things to show other people how to do it. And if I was just almost like being lazy, like covering the gaps with drugs, it's like, well, that's not how someone at the top level should conduct themselves. So I wasn't going to do that. So got up to about 110. Not bad body composition wise, but also not great because it's the first time. Like bear in mind, like heaviest before had been 90. So naturally being 20 kilos above that was going to be pretty tasty. Then went into a diet for a photo shoot prep, which was really good fun then because I had
That was the Bailey shoot that we all know?
Yes, so that was start of 2023. That would have been.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, a couple of years ago now. That was then first time kind of dieting, fully back down again. I now then had the muscle that when I got lean, I actually looked okay rather than just
more
being
than okay.
Thank you. Rather than just a skinny version of myself. So that was really good fun. And I also, because I'm a psychopath, did it over winter. Because obviously, why would you diet in summer when it's easy? Why not do it in winter when you have to get up and it's -8 and defrosting your car to go and do cardio and it's still dark 2 hours after you've got home type thing.
People don't realize how much colder it makes you not to have any body fat until they actually get lean.
My shoot was, I want to say something like February the 2nd. So Georgie and I, we went away with her dad and brother on maybe like January the 10th to Iceland. And
where else, really?
And the pretty certain you've been, so you know what it's like when it's peak winter. And it was, I can't remember exactly how cold it got, but it must have been -15, 16 and wind chill and extra stuff. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but there were points where I was like, I'm going to die here. Because it'd be like, I remember we had, like, it's beautiful out there, one of the most incredible places I've been to. We went to one bit where there was a waterfall, and we're like, oh, let's try and get a picture. Took my glove off, and I was like, well, that's my fingers gone. Friday frostbitten, all that extra stuff. And yeah, it was.
And Alex is actually from the north, so he's kind of used to it. Like I said, the uncrowned king of wearing shorts in any weather.
Exactly.
Maybe that was the problem. You should have put on something else other than shorts in Iceland.
Exactly, yeah. I had to buy a coat for that trip. I was like, I didn't realize a coat was a thing. I had to drive about 100 miles south to find a shop that actually sold them. But yeah, it gets you. But I did that diet in winter because I was like, well, it'll be fun. Like, again, it's all or nothing mentality is I'd rather be captured by something that's just more extreme and ridiculous and then roll with that. I dieted over Christmas, had a bit of time off over actually like Christmas Day and Boxing Day and stuff, but was that personal, like the 27th of December, doing cardio at 6 a.m. And yeah.
So what was your photo shoot weight in the end after?
I want to say 91, 92.
Wow.
Something along those lines. I was just over 10 kilos up from the initial one, but equally, like, a lot leaner. Like, I was...
A lot leaner, yeah.
Yeah, pretty lean at that point. Leaner than I've ever been. And yes, this is actually the perfect example of, I said I didn't want to just have anabolics as like, oh, the reason he's changed is because of this. Like, yes, they helped me get leaner during that diet. Like, there were more things I was able to use, but at the same time, it wasn't just that. If I'd been 5 kilos up after all that time, then it's like, well, what was the point? But you compare, and there's some of these on my Instagram, you compare pictures from one shoot to the next. Like, it's a different
it's insane. Yeah. What was your original intention with going on gear? Like, did you want to compete, or did you want to be able to handle clients that compete better? Or
yeah, good question. So two mainly. So one of them was curiosity. I knew the way I saw it is I was more into everything that kind of bodybuilding encompasses as a package than probably 99% of people. And I was like, well, if I'm so into this stuff, like, I want to see how far I can take it. Not for anything else, not necessarily for a competitive sense. That wasn't really ever in my head, but more a case of I want to see what I can do. Like, I'd already transformed a decent amount to get to where I was when I made that choice. But it's like, well, what can I get to? Like, I'm always one of those people where I don't want to get to being 80 years old and be like, oh yeah, but if I'd have done this, then this could have happened. It's like, well, I'd rather do it and kind of see what happens from it, like see what comes from it. So kind of see what I could take my physique to, like go on even more of an extreme journey to kind of push that top level. But also from a coaching aspect, genuinely, like it's one of those ones that I work with like a decent number of competitors, not quite as many now as I did at that point. Like I probably have 5-ish on the books now. Coaches, like high level physique athletes, where it's always going to be a conversation that comes up, whether someone's used something before or wanting to make that move or whatever it might be. And as I said earlier, like I didn't want to just be that guy that knew about things because he'd watched a video on it. It's much more than that. Like if I can guide someone through how to do an injection and keep themselves safe, how something's going to feel, like exactly what's going to happen. There are different levels to it that in my head you can only learn from actually just doing it in the first place. So it's partly selfish for me, but also partly from a business aspect.
So did you in the end get to that level that now when you turn 80, you look back and you achieved what you wanted to achieve, or is there still more?
Yeah, I think so. From a physique aspect, yes. The kind of peak that I got up to in terms of the amount of tissue that I had, the size that I was, I'm never going to get there again. So I came off things at the start of the year, last year. So I've had about a year now being back to a skinny natty again, and well, relatively.
Not skinny at all, but again, carry on.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd say that. I was hoping you'd chime in and just lead you down that path. But no, I'm at a stage now where having come off things, having like being able to look back on pictures and look back on that and be like, I'm damn proud of that, but also not needing to take it any further because, like we said, so for context, after that shoot, I then put on 25, 30 kilos again. Again, with other things at play, like kind of explored for me that upper limit of how big I could get, which is where that 45 kilo figure ended up coming from. That was the kind of total amount over time from kind of.
So what was your highest ever weight?
I want to say 120, 122, somewhere around there. And for me, it's like there were parts that I loved being there. Like training has never been as fun, but equally, I couldn't go for a walk without panting. I couldn't climb the stairs without panting. Like blood pressure was high. Like it sounds all well and good saying, "Oh, I gained 45 kilos, I gained 100 pounds," but it's still the amount of stress that puts in the body is vast. And realistically, my body wasn't made to be that big. It could get up to that point, but it wasn't made to be there, and I couldn't hold that for the rest of my life because I'd be taking years off my life. So I looked at it as well. I can get to that point. I can enjoy a window of time when I'm there, but then come back down again. I can't eat 5,500 calories a day and try and work and try and be a normal person and do everything else. So I look back on it like damn proud, but I'm like happy with what I was able to do. And I like to answer your question, like, yes, I can do that now, let alone being at 80 and kind of like tick that physique box. But now it's more a case of, well, what can I do where I can take elements of that I enjoyed the most, but not have to be that sort of size, not have to be an absolute blob that can't fit into clothes and can't do things and can't get through doorways and can't fit a plane seat, like all those extra bits that as the glamorous side you don't think about. You see a picture of some of the top off and you're like, oh, like he's big. But then normal life isn't made for people my size at that size. So we come back to more of a normal point again now.
Why did you come off things in the end?
So just to change of life. So I moved out to Sydney last February. We got here, and January time we left the UK. So the main thing
it's only been a year.
It's been a year, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we basically had the whole of 2024 right here. It's zoomed by. It's wild. So there's a different setup out here from a legality sense. In the UK, it's legal to own and self-administer, whereas it's not in Australia. Everything has to be done through doctors. And I was like, well, I'm not going to take that risk. It's not worth it. Like, I don't want to ruin like my life out here, mine and George's life out here, like lose visas, kicked out of the country, like that sort of thing. I was like, well, there's because part of it was for selfish reasons. And by that stage, from having done it, I'd learned from a kind of coaching application stage what I needed to learn. It was then just a case of, for me, I was like, well, that selfish choice to keep doing it wasn't worth it for both of us, and especially for George. So I was like, well, I'm going to come off, and also I'm going to come off anyway. I'd rather be in Sydney in the sunshine rather than in grey, dreary England. So made that choice, officially stopped within the 30th of January, I think it was. So it's been, record this on the 29th, it's been essentially a year now of not being a pinkush anymore, which is quite nice. So yeah,
how did that feel coming off it? Because you hear these stories about how much it mostly messes with your head because it's so easy to progress. You have this like relentless energy on stuff, and then you come off it. You cannot sustain the same muscle mass. You don't have the same energy and drive, and it can really mess with people's heads. What was your experience?
So mine wasn't as bad as some of the horror stories that I'd heard. I was confident that it wasn't going to be. And I think that came from what we discussed earlier about the time that I spent like loving this stuff before using anything, because it seems to be, and it's one of the worst things that people don't really speak about that much is, as you said, that mental side where you get attached to certain things, to looking a certain way, feeling a certain way, training a certain way, all these things that are going to be hard to relinquish at some point. But because I'd had an extended period of time of feeling similar to that without anything in my system, I was like, well, it's not a massive change. Like, it's not feel incredible, everything here, to then just miserable, sad and depressed, because I didn't have a reference point of what this felt like. I knew what this felt like and it felt pretty damn good. And yeah, it wasn't necessarily the absolute peak, but because there were lots of reasons for me to come off, as I said, because I was unhealthy, and unhealthy is the relative term obviously at that point, but like because I was so big, like my body wasn't comfortable there, I knew I could come down to this leveled off point, and rather than only having bad things about coming down to there, actually being at a stage where I'm like, well, I'm fitter than I've ever been. I'm still able to train at a good level where it's not the same as when I had the most amount of anabolics in me, but it's still damn good. It's still stronger than I was back all that time ago. I've still got all the muscle that I gained because I didn't just artificially gain it because I had everything in there. So for me, it wasn't too bad. Like, yes, you still notice it. Like you got less fullness to your physique, less pop to your physique, and there were windows of time where I felt a lot more sluggish in the mornings, for example, because I had to go through a stage of essentially zero, like testosterone, zero estrogen to get things whirring again. But to be at this point now, a year later, and be like, well, pretty damn sweet here is fine. Like I don't look back and kind of go, oh, like I need to like come on like immediately type thing. That's not the case. But I can see why people would do that, where they come off for 6 months and then be like, I can't do this anymore, because like it's an addiction essentially, and because they've only got that reference point of what they felt like good and bad, they're always going to veer towards good. So yeah, lucky in that sense, but also I think it was being realistic and also being more into this, and a probably more stable journey beforehand made it a lot easier.
Not having any testosterone, as in when you come off it and your natural production hasn't like revamped yet?
Yes, exactly. So that was my process. The typical process of coming off, but my process of coming off was essentially you stop all and cease all use, which naturally is going to mean that hormone levels come down because your body isn't producing anything, but equally at the same time, you're not injecting anything. So you're going to see levels start to taper off. It's typically 4 to 6 weeks, kind of clearing period, we call it normally. At that point, normally, you've got nothing left, like trace amounts in your system, everything's left. You aren't producing anything, so you're pretty low, like you're not feeling too great. But then the body starts to get itself kind of whirring up again afterwards. And my body was able to rebound quite quickly because I didn't go crazy.
Massive balls.
That's a clip for a reel if ever I've heard one. Just you. I want that as my alarm. Actually, I just want to wake up every single morning just hearing you just saying massive balls straight into the mic. So I forgot what I was saying.
So what does that 4 to 6 weeks feel like?
But basically the same. I didn't really notice anything at all during that stage. The difference is afterwards. So after that 4 to 6 weeks, because you imagine hormone levels are here. Over 4 to 6 weeks, they're coming down. As they're coming down, you don't really notice it. It was more after they were here. So they kind of come down to... Sorry, for the people that are only listening, right. I'm going to have no idea what I'm kind of referencing, but it's almost like, imagine on a graph like a higher level compared to the bottom level on that kind of bottom axis. That bottom point after 4 to 6 weeks is typically when people feel their worst, because that's the stage where either hormone function starts to get itself moving again and the body's able to produce testosterone, or you need to give it a little bit of a kick to get it going. My body was able to rebound, and I didn't need to do anything like a PCT to get my body able to produce hormones again. I was able to it could do it itself. So I had a period of time where I felt a little bit slower for that small window, but yeah, fine now. Which is good.
So when you say that training doesn't necessarily feel the same, even though you didn't suffer, how does it feel different when you're on stuff?
Strength goes up. Your ability to recover goes up. It's not massive, but it's noticeable at the same time, if that makes sense. Like some of the numbers that I used to be able to throw around, like one of my goals this year is to get back to that sort of level, kind of get back to that point where I'm as strong as I was, but not as quite as artificially. I remember one of my last sessions up north in England, kind of a couple of weeks, I think, before we flew out here, I remember being at a really good stage where I wasn't too heavy, like I was fit, I was strong, had a few bits in my system, but nothing too crazy. So the body was feeling quite good. And I remember last session at Ultraflex in York was RDLing, which is a terrible idea because I was about to drive 4 hours down south. I had 4 plates in the bar, it's 180 kilos, unracked it, and it just felt like air. And I was just like, oh, this is good. And like I'd never really experienced that before. And that's kind of the reference point. Like it's just, you're able to just move weight, which you couldn't move before.
What's the mechanism under which it makes you stronger?
I don't fully know. I don't know if it's a neural thing. I don't know if it's a neural adaptation. So your nervous system is just able to get a little bit more fired up than it could do before. It could just be a direct crossover from testosterone to force production potentially. I'll be honest, from a scientific perspective, I don't know the exact reason. But it's just one of those ones where it's there. But again, I think that's a really good example where if you've got someone that hasn't trained consistently and hasn't trained well before and hasn't got strong before, they've got a point where they weren't very good at training and a point where they're artificially very good at training suddenly. They're not going to want to come back to that start point because it's like, well, I like this. I'm going to stay here. I hear horror stories, guys, where I do consults with them where they've stayed on anabolics for 18 months plus without a period of time kind of reducing down their exposure or getting themselves healthy again because they're addicted to it. Because they're like, well, I feel like Superman now. I don't want to feel not like Superman. So I'm going to keep doing this. And that's when it gets a little bit ropey. I think that's kind of the age that we're in now, which is a bit scary.
Mm-hmm. Did you experience any disadvantages while you were on it?
Not massively. In terms of side effects, I got a few spots, but it's relatively normal. It was only really short term, and I tended to know why. Like if it was the middle of summer and I was that heavy and I was sweating a bit more, and I don't know, like I waited a couple of hours after I trained and was a bit. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? But like a bit sweaty and hadn't showered straight away, I'd get a few more spots coming through. But equally, that would be the case for most people normally. Aside from that, not really. No, I was very careful with things in the sense of I was very specific to not let anything happen. Like it's naturally, like from a health perspective, I said I've had a window of time in my life where I've been less healthy. I said blood pressure would have been up. It was never terrible because I kept on top of it. Was very diligent with things like cardio and with supplementation and other things that I could do to keep myself at a point where I wasn't just wrecking my body. And again, that's why I look back at it. I look back at it now as I was as healthy as I could have been, but I was less healthy than I would have been if I hadn't have used any anabolics in the first place. But that's where, for me, the benefit at that time was worth it. And I look back, and as I said before, I'm proud of it, but I'm not now looking at it as being like, oh, I can't wait for that to happen again for the next 20 years of my life, because for me now it's not worth it. I don't need to. You
don't think you will ever go back on it?
I will probably use TRT at some point when hormone function kind of comes down a little bit. But look, I'm never going to say never, but equally at the same time, it would not be from a physique sense. It wouldn't be from a sense of I want to step in a competitive stage or I want to get to the point where I'm up at that body weight again, because the way I see it again, I've ticked that box. I don't need to get to that stage again. And it would be stupidity to get there, in a sense. I said, I would then be at a point where I'm like, well, I'm taking potentially years off my life to get to this point to do something I've already done. Mm-hmm. What's the need?
Not gonna lie, you made this whole thing very attractive for me right now, because
it's bad, isn't it? Like it's difficult speaking about. I remember I documented a bit of it to start with, and then started to kind of veer away from it because it's, as I said, like it's much more normalized now in the industry, more than it ever has been, which I don't think is a good thing, because people will speak about safe use and like, oh, I can supplement with this, and it negates all negatives that might crop up, and it's like, well, it doesn't. It's still drug use. It's still bad. It's still this taboo subject, and I still firmly believe it should be. It's not one of those ones that's like, oh yeah, I'm using a little bit now because I need TRT to keep me healthy, and the guy's twice above the natural limit. Like it shouldn't work that way. So I actually stopped documenting it because I was like, well, I don't think this is right. I don't want to speak about it too much and glamorize it too much, because otherwise, even just one person reads a post and goes, oh, I hadn't thought about this before, I'm going to do it now.
I was wondering why you discontinued.
Yeah, that was exactly why I felt like, because as I said, like when we speak about training, like you and I, it'll excite both of us, like the ability to be stronger and train better and recover more from training. You're like, oh, that sounds great. And I said, there are still negatives there. And because I was so diligent with things, didn't have as many negatives as some people would and as I could have done. But the vast majority of people out there aren't going to do that. So they are going to put themselves at risk.
True. And with where the majority of people want to get to, if they did those, like if they put their attention into training and nutrition and sleep anyway, they probably would get there even without taking any stuff.
100%. So I had a conversation last week with a coach who I mentor and one of his clients who had just come through like some like horrific gut issues and gut struggles and basically 6 months of sorting out his stomach because he was at a point where he couldn't eat without it just absolutely wrecking him essentially. Like it was really, really bad. And they'd been able to sort it and fix it, ran bloods, health is in actually a decent state now, gut's in a good place, testosterone's a little bit low. And this guy hasn't trained for 6 months. He's only just been able to fix his gut. And the client is like, oh, can I start using some things now? And that's the step, isn't it? It's like, you've not trained. You've not done anything else. Like, why? You've not earned the right to do it.
Was the gut issue not from substance use, just the amount of food associated with it?
Just, yeah. So he hadn't used anabolics before. It wasn't anabolics that drove that gut issue in the first place. It was stress, like the kind of classic things that we will see, like poor lifestyle choices, poor food choices, etc. But yeah, it's almost this thing where people see it as like a supplement now. Like, oh, I can take this. It's like, no.
Yeah, because everyone else is taking it, and if you don't, then you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah. But I actually now tell more people to not use anything than I do guide them in terms of how to use it. Because
it's strange because all these positives that you said, like you didn't really have side effects, you didn't have any issues coming off it, you got to this level that you will be proud of the rest of your life, you got really strong. Why do you recommend not doing it? To someone, general population, I understand, but to someone like me, for example, why not?
So two big reasons with that. One of them is there may be side effects that I can't see. And this is always the risk of doing it. It's from a health idea, like someone could have an underlying heart condition and heart grows. You obviously just want to, like when it comes to hypertrophy, like everything's going to grow when you have increased testosterone. Like someone could drop dead straight away. And that's,
did you do growth hormone as well?
Yes. Yeah. A small amount. Yeah. And the same sort of thing. Like it's one of those ones where just because one person, it's like, you get those outliers where it's like, oh, well, actually my gran lived to 95 and she smoked 50 cigarettes a day. Like, but then someone could smoke one cigarette and bang, something happens. Like that sort of thing where I'm like, I said, I was diligent. I was on top of things. I was like very anal about a lot of things. But even then there could be bits under the hood that I don't know about. And again, for the majority of people, like they don't know. That's kind of my first point to it. But also the second side is the mental side. Like people who don't know how they're going to deal with it, genuinely. I think I would have struggled if I was still in England, but to have done such a big life move of coming out here, that actually the mental side was actually made a lot easier because so many other things were happening as well. Like I was going to a place where I'm now much happier, living in a place where there's much more sunshine, like in a lifestyle and in a life now where it's changed. Whereas if I just come off and everything else in the UK had stayed the same, you suddenly have those thoughts in your head of being like, oh, well, I could stay on now. Then I said for like the perfect example of you there, like I would still say, no, don't do it because you might get a bit of short-term enjoyment from it and you're going to get some progress from it, yes. But equally at the same time, you don't know where you're going to then be in 5-10 years.
Interesting. So if we just go into more the bulking side of things, what are your top tips when it comes to eating? Because you took your food so high for such a long time. Like I have these clients that are like, oh, David, you're so lucky. You're eating 4,500 calories. I would love to get there. And then they finish their cut. We start increasing their food. They get to 2,500 calories and they're like, I can't eat this much. How do you do it? What are your best tips?
Oh, yeah, I love people like that. All the people who are like, oh, it must be great to eat. Mine was 5,500 calories a day for about 6 months and weight didn't really move. The people who are like, oh, that must be great. And you're like, it is the worst thing in the world. Yes. It's the ultimate first world problem, but it's also the worst thing in the world. So mine is always going to be based around picking foods that you can eat and that you can digest easily. And that is going to come from a very careful balance, typically, of nutritional quality being high enough. Because I think sometimes people hear, I can digest cereal really well. I'm going to eat cereal and eat nothing else. So keeping food quality high enough, but just being a bit selective in terms of exactly where it comes from. Like rice is always going to be one of the biggest foods that people are going to eat from a carb side of things. Protein sources that people like is typically my first step with people. I don't really care on fat content or other bits and bobs like that. If someone really likes chicken and they don't like beef, eat as much chicken as you can eat to get your protein in. Same thing, like I ate a lot of beef mince at that time because I really liked combining beef mince and rice, and it worked well for me, so that's what worked. So it's almost that ability to be able to get a food down where you've got a nutrient baseline, you're getting enough good stuff into you, but you can also actually just eat it at the same time. Because again, I've made plenty of mistakes doing that. I've gone far too simple with food choices and had, say, 4 meals a day, and 2 of them have been like cereal or cream of rice and whey, and then wondered why my stomach felt terrible 3 months down the line. But also, I've tried to eat 1.5 kilos of potatoes because I like potato wedges in the air fryer. I then wonder why I felt horrific for the next 24 hours. So it's just the sweet spot of the two.
I'm not sure if this is your quote or I just saw it from you, but I love that when you said a calorie surplus shouldn't equal a nutrient deficiency.
I think we've mentioned that a couple of times before, haven't we? Because it does. Like people get to a stage where they're just like, well, calories are calorie, bro. And you're like, it's not. Like, good luck not getting fat while you're eating your squares bars type thing.
Yeah, I severely messed up my digestion as well. Just like, if it fits your macros, very simple carbs, zero nutritional value, and then a year later, I was in bits as well. Yeah,
and it happened. And I think you actually have to go through that stage to learn it. Because also, I've got some clients who've got absolute ironclad stomachs who could eat oats and whey 6 times a day and getting 5,000 calories would be fine. If I did that once, like I'm done for the day. I'm knocked out. So that's I can't remember what a day would look like. It was ridiculous at that point. It was good fun sometimes. So me and George and I would train in the mornings because I didn't like training on a full stomach. I think I had about 100 grams of carbs intra-workout. Come back, post-workout was 250 grams of carbs from cereal and maybe a squares bar and whey.
100 grams of carbs from dextrin intra-workout?
Yes.
Damn.
Yeah,
wow.
Basically drinking soup during my session was not fun. And then 250 carb from cereal post-workout or like simple something to get down. But that was terrible because imagine if at 8 o'clock in the morning, you've just nailed 350 grams of carbs and you've got to try and start work.
Good luck, exactly.
God, I needed a nap and a coffee, and I was like, the sun's not even up yet.
Your 8 a.m. nap.
Oh, it was horrible. And I had a rice cooker in the UK and would cook up 500 grams of dry weight rice, and that would just cover me for 3 meals with, I think mince or protein sauce, and I put some veg in there as well, and that was me done. Yeah, it was nuts. I think it was 800, 850 maybe grams of carbs a day I topped out at. So that was a good example. Like there were 3 good quality main meals that had like grown up food, and then just a simpler like hit of carbohydrates in the morning because I needed to get something down more easily. But it wasn't just I'm just going to eat Cocoa Pops as a carb source all day because I get more from it, because you won't. You'll feel like trash the whole time.
How important was it for you to keep some food variety in there?
Really important. So I basically would go through stage with things where I would know within a meal macros for that meal because I tend to keep them about the same, kind of especially meals 2, 3, and 4. And if I wanted to rotate a protein source, I knew what else I could have. Especially a carb source, if I was like, I don't fancy rice, I'll have wraps or pasta or potato or sweet, like whatever it might be. Like I could swap things out relatively easily because, at that stage you get sick of food so quickly that if you get to a point where you're sitting there with a massive, like I used to get out mixing bowls, it was insane. Like George would take the mick out of me every day. I was sitting there with a massive mixing bowl. You don't want to eat it. You're not going to eat it. It's not going down. So you need variety there. I actually think it's really interesting comparing this to dieting, because dieting is the opposite. Dieting, people need rigidity, they need structure, and they just need to be a bit more black and white. Whereas at this level of an extreme, you don't want to be thinking about food the entire time because like you'll lose an hour every day, but you also can't on the flip side, try and eat the same thing the whole time because you're going to get bored.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I saw your maybe maintenance or cutting post where you were like, in the morning, I want to not think. So I just do mince and eggs because I'm very good at cooking mince and eggs, but I'm not very good at thinking or something similar.
I think that's pretty much word for word, like sums it up. And it's true. Like it's still the same thing now. Like now I have yogurt. I've got it actually after this, yogurt, some fruit, and then a Aldi. You know, Aldi obviously come like those prepackaged squares of dark chocolate, like one of those. Because I'm like, well, don't have to think at all. I can do work. I'll be honest, mate. I don't know about you. I don't really like thinking. If I can, I've got a certain amount of thinking I can do each day. So I'm like, I don't want to work out how many grams of tomatoes that I need at lunch. It's like I'd rather put that into work.
I'm the exact same with food, and I think most people that get to that level when they have to eat so much, and it's like almost a full-time job for like a few years that you have to eat. It just kind of takes the joy out of it, and from there it's more mechanical. You know, you just want to not have to think about it. It just gets the job done.
Yeah. Well, like my food now is about 3,300 calories a day, which again for a lot of people would be like, oh, that's loads. For me, I'm like, I feel great. Like I've never felt so good in my life.
You maintaining?
Ish type thing. Like it's probably around maintenance. Maintenance is kind of for me quite like a fluid thing at the moment. So training volume's going up. I've got some kind of like fitness goals and there are other things that are coming in place this year. So it's food will inevitably increase, I think, over the next few months. But that's in accordance with output at the same time. But eating that amount of food and even eating at maintenance, mate, is the best thing in the world. Because I've had extremes. Like even, it's crazy, like to go back to that kind of timeline of kind of either side of that photo shoot that I did in 2023, I think I lost about 20 kilos in the 6 months dieting for it. And then I put on 25 kilos in the 6 months after it. So like 45 kilos swing, like just in 12 months. So to now eat a normal amount of food and actually roughly maintain body weight, I'm like, oh, this is novel.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
Not being hungry, not being constantly stuffed. But I think we both agree that being hungry is so much easier and so much better than being always stuffed.
Yeah, which is great. Again, it's that funny thing of, again, like naturally like slighter, skinnier background. You then do your time eating everything and then you're like, oh, I don't really want to eat much now. How much do I need to eat to not shrink? But then also at the same time, like I can get up in the morning and have a coffee and do work rather than thinking, oh, I need to get something into me here. Where's your food at the minute? Because I know I can still picture in the back room back in the day just watching you eat rice cakes for must have been an hour relentlessly.
I don't like talking about that 1.5 years of me landing in London. That was not the peak of my life. Right now, my food is relatively high, 3,700. Slowly gaining, but it's just the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? So I was doing like 4,000 something for a year or 1.5, whereas now it's just I know how to integrate it, but it's still not comfortable, you know. But it will soon get to that like really uncomfortable point where I'm actually stuffed all the time.
Yeah. So how do you get that down then? What are your tips that you found, especially when food was like over 4,000? What would a day look like?
Yeah. So right now it's a little bit unconventional because I like more smaller meals. So I don't know what your reaction will be, but most people are outraged. But I just eat 3 meals. So it's 3 meals of about 1,200 calories.
Yeah. I'd always rather more time between meals to let it digest than I don't want to eat again in 2 hours.
Exactly. And from a work standpoint as well, it's easier to not have to sit down every 4 hours, for example. Plus, I really enjoy not eating in the morning, just like having more mental clarity, getting some stuff done, and then maybe later. And when it was over 4,000, it was, like I said, I just really sacrificed food quality, which was an issue. So it was a lot more simpler carbs. I did what I think every newbie does initially, and get rid of all vegetables.
I don't need fiber. I don't need good things. Why would I have a vegetable when I can have potato? Yeah.
Yeah, because you're always so full that eventually you want to create more space, and you're like, oh, well, actually vegetables are not that calorific, so I can just take them out and more calories fit in. But then, it completely murders your digestion. Yeah. So now I'm trying to not do that same thing.
We live and learn, don't we? We live and learn.
So one of the things that you said when it comes to bulking is variety of food choices. Also keeping more nutritious stuff in there as well, and just picking foods that you sit with? What else?
Actually, what we touched on just there, meal frequency, finding a structure through the day that actually works for you. Because people tend to fall into two camps where, again, you and I can tolerate being full, knowing that we've got 4 or 5 hours until we need to eat again. Other times people like to eat to 80, 90% full and then just kind of keep things ticking over. I think it's really important once you've worked out what works for you to then run with that. Finding methods of cooking that are easy as well. This is the proper unsexy stuff with eating this amount of food. Cooking takes a long time. Washing up takes a long time. The more, seamless you can make all of that stuff, the better. You don't want to have to cook every single meal individually at the time. You don't have to wash up a frying pan at every single meal. So it's, can you find approaches where you're potentially cooking things in bulk? Can you have easier options where you're using a packet rice rather than cooking rice from a rice cooker? Like I said, I used to cook it all up for the day and just leave it in the rice cooker. And don't know how to get ill. You'd just be on the side all day or in the fridge and just like spoon out roughly a third of it each time. I'm like, well, that'll do. And also move it around a little bit. That's the kind of sometimes forgotten part of this. Like, there are so many food things that we can dive into in terms of like food options that we can go into. Like we could structure a full day of someone's food to kind of keep that as easy for them as possible. But people also fall into the habit when they're eating a lot of food that they just sit down all day. And they're heavier, they're feeling more sluggish, and they kind of lean into that a little bit too much. But a little walk before a meal, after a meal, whatever it might be, a walk in the morning to kind of get things moving does way more for you than I think people realize. Because if you eat a 1,500 calorie meal and you sit down for 10 minutes, the food's not gone anywhere. It's just still sitting there with you. You feel terrible. You don't want to get up. Whereas if it's a case you can be like, right, I'm going to keep a baseline level of activity in there through the day. It's not going to mean you need to eat X amount more food. It's not. People kind of sell themselves this argument of, oh, if I do 10,000 steps, I'm going to have to eat another 6,000 calories a day. Like, it's not going to work that way. You're going to need to do a certain amount, and then you can actually get down. Like, the worst days for me were training sometimes in the evening for whatever reason. Maybe I had like work stuff in the morning and train like 6 o'clock, and I come back and I knew I had to go for a walk to chill out post training, get me a little bit hungry. I then had to eat. Then I had to go for another walk. So then I had to go to bed. And it was like time consuming wise, it was awful. But it was, if I'd just sat down eaten straight away and then gone to bed, like I would have felt awful. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's not allowing yourself to become a slug essentially, and actually keeping yourself going. Like you were doing a diet. Like people like think the classic person like dieting in summer. They're up and about. They're walking around. They're moving. They're keeping themselves active through the day. It's no surprise that you tend to feel a lot better, and it's not just the deficit in the diet that's doing it. It's because you're actually moving your body. But people, as it gets to this point where they're like, well, I'm trying to get bigger now, so I need to just eat and train and not do anything else that actually puts me in a good, healthy place. So yeah, that alongside good food choices, and people can't really go too wrong.
If we circle back to you saying that you have different sort of fitness goals for this year, what would those be?
So with this kind of comes back to having, obviously now being in a different state, so with no anabolics at play, like I come to terms with the fact, it wasn't that difficult to come to terms with the fact that like physique wise I've peaked, which sounds a little bit depressing, like out of context, but I'm not going to be getting up to that stage where I've got the level of anabolics that are going to artificially make me look a little bit different for a period of time. So I'm kind of like, well, I'm not going to look like that absolute peak again, but I can look like 80, 90% of it. But equally, I can't just keep chasing physique related goals I have done for the last 7 or 8 years, because it's not going to capture me in the same way. Like it's not going to be that continual improvement. So it's now slightly more down a performance route and having numbers to chase in the gym and training things to start to hunt down a little bit. So I've got some training ones that I want to tick off this year, but also from a aerobic perspective. So I've got a bit of a rowing background, not crazily so, but like, because I'm tall, like I might as well lean into it type thing. And like did a little bit of it in the past. Like I've played about doing little bits of it. So I've started getting back into that a little bit more recently as cardio and as having like actual cardio, not just burning calories. And I discovered actually through a friend called James that actually there were like online leaderboards for Concept 2 who make most rowers or like decent rowers and kind of like leaderboards on there. So like, right, can I get stuck into that and get myself onto that leaderboard at some point? So I got some programming kind of put in place specifically for that to improve some rowing times, as well as strength stuff at the same point. So like get my RDL back up, like deadlifting 5 plates, like these sorts of things that I want to really kind of fly with as well. And for me now, that's a lot more exciting because it's things that are still giving me purpose in training beyond just, can I get bigger? Because I don't really want to get bigger at the moment. So it's kind of do something else. So I'm not just kind of in that limbo stage and not going anywhere.
So what did your weight come down to after discontinuing with the use?
Lowest is probably about 95.
And what are you now?
About 100-ish now.
Yes.
So I absolutely topped out about 100, 120, 122. Most of the time I kind of sat, like a year ago when we left and I came off, I think I was about 105. So I didn't drop a huge amount of body weight intentionally. Like I kept eating, kept training, did all the usual things that I would have done anyway. It's now just using my body in a slightly different way, which I'm actually really enjoying so far. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm not going to do flipping high rocks. Like I'm not going to do anything.
Another hybrid athlete.
I'm never ever going to call myself a hybrid athlete because I'm not good enough at anything to
That's
count
the
as
point.
hybrid.
That's the point. Are you weak?
I've got so much respect for people that I love watching people who are just good at everything. Like people who can, like ultramarathon runners, like anything to an extreme. I'm like, that is unbelievably cool, but I'm not going to be that, and I'm willing to accept I'm not going to be that. So it's like if I can be good at
that's kind of the
things,
point. That's the point of being a hybrid athlete. Like, are you a little bit weak, but also a little bit slow? Just call yourself a hybrid athlete.
Yeah, just train for a half marathon, and you can get weaker. Yeah, and also I even that's funny actually. I even tried a little bit of running because running out in Sydney is a really big thing, and I like the idea of just being able to get up and go. Like I can leave the house and be back in X amount of time, and also I like the fact that I can then eat more food because I was running. But equally, I'm not good at running. Like my body's not made for running. I'm still this weight, so I was like, nah, get me on a rowing machine where I can get a pump and I can still get like a decent bit of cardio rather than just like
some tibialis volume.
Oh yeah, exactly, mate. Honestly, you should have seen like my soleus and tib anterior, just absolutely wild, and I couldn't walk, and I was like, this sucks. So I forgot that, and I was like, I'll just go to the gym, just go sit on a rowing machine until I fall off. Much better.
Do you have time for some rapid fire questions?
Oh, mate, absolutely. Yeah, it's 8:30 in the morning here, so I've got loads of time. I can sit here all day. I don't know what time it is with you at the minute in the States, but
I'm good. I was looking at the wrong timer. I forgot that we had like a 15-minute chat before even starting the recording. So I didn't want to use up your time.
It's always the case, mate.
A book everyone should read.
I've actually got 2. One of them is actually funny because I don't really like the author anymore. But Happy Sexy Millionaire.
Is it Stephen Bartlett?
Yes. I
hate him. I like the book.
I'm exactly the same, and it pains me to say it, but I also learned so much from his book that I'm like...
We will cut this part of the podcast out.
Exactly. So Alex actually said that he didn't have any more time. So that was when I first got introduced to him before he started bringing on absolute whack jobs onto his podcast. But the way, before he got weird and before Huel took over his life, his book is actually really good in terms of like, for example, like I really like how he speaks about, he defines happy, sexy, and millionaire. He defines the word happy, and he's like, happy isn't just a state of right now. Like if I said to you, are you happy? And like you wouldn't think of it as the bigger picture of your life. You'd think of like, like I'm pretty happy because I can actually understand what Al's saying to me, type thing, for the first time in 7 years. Like it'd be that sort of thing. And it's like I got a lot from his perspective about bits and like gratitude for here and now and those sorts of things. And I actually think our sort of crowd of people, our sort of age, like mid to late 20s, who, especially people who've worked a lot in their life and have kind of set their life up to where they are now, I think it's a really useful read just to give a bit of perspective on stuff. I've unfollowed him and don't listen to his podcast and refuse to listen to the podcast because I get so angry every single time. And I'm like, this is... And that's why, honestly, it pains me so much to recommend his book. The amount of people I've recommended it to.
I've literally stopped recommending it because of what he became. And I have the book on the bookshelf and I look at it every few days and I'm like, maybe I should just throw it out, but then I never do.
It's a good way of getting yourself angry to go and train, though.
Yeah.
It's a perfect one. And Atomic Habits as well, my second one. Sorry, go on. I saw his eyebrows go up there.
Have you read The Power of Habit?
I think I want to say I've got the audiobook on Audible, but I don't know if it's queued or if I've actually listen through it. Who?
Charles
I won't do
Duhigg, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I found it so much more applicable and useful than Atomic Habits, which I think is sacrilegious to say because Atomic Habits is so good as well.
Yeah. I listen to it. I think it depends when you listen to things. Like I listened to Atomic Habits actually I think I actually read it on Dan and Umar's recommendation about 5 years ago, kind of before I really went into like, I don't know how to describe it, like personal development, like that sort of thing. So for me, it was one of my kind of early introductions. About the point where I also listened to Can't Hurt Me by Goggins, and decided that I was weak and pathetic and all those extra bits. That's all. I could probably list you 10 ones that people could listen to because I find things like autobiographies fascinating and learning from people fascinating. But they're my big two where I said, especially anyone listening to this who's our sort of age and at a similar point in life, good ones to go into.
What's your favorite exercise? RDLs.
RDLs, 100%. Any form. Could be machine, it could be a barbell, it could be dumbbell. You knew that was coming, didn't you? Because my favourite part of a set, and this is, some people will relate to this, other people are going to be like, you're a weirdo. My favourite part of a set is like 2 or 3 seconds leading up to the set actually starting. So like, for example, if it's a barbell, it's like I'm putting my straps on, music's building up in my head, and you almost like know you have to get to a point where you're like, nothing else matters for that set. It's getting into that headspace is what I enjoy the most. Like that's my fun bit where I'm like, right, there could be anything going on around me and I don't care, I don't see, because I'm going in for this now. That's my good bit.
It's interesting that's your favorite part. It's like the most taxing part of the set for me, like getting there mentally. But it's good that you're mentioning it because a lot of people just don't do enough of it. Like I have these clients, and obviously there are different levels, so I'm not going to point this out with a beginner, but when I have more advanced clients and they just like step there and start like immediately free falling with the weight, and I'm just like, get in your head, plan out the set, imagine what it will feel like, imagine how many reps you want to get, and then get into it. It's like, I don't know who said it, Reid Hoffman, that entrepreneurship is like you jump off a cliff and you build a plane while you're falling. And that's what they're doing, but it should be more planned out instead.
Yeah, and you got the time to do it. And I'm a planner, so I'll happily plan away. Get a song lined up, get ready for the set,
Same
make a bit of
song?
noise and crash around.
Do you always have the same song lineup?
No. Song will change. And I can't even tell you what I listen to. It'll change depending on the session. I've got certain ones that I'll sometimes go to, like random ones. So like, for example, contradictory, so like terrible film, but the first Suicide Squad. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, damn it. Basically, there's a point in that, and you'll have to watch it after this. There's a really cool point of that. So Will Smith plays a assassin in that called Deadshot. And he's been kept in prison. The first film, like they basically go and find all these prisoners. They bring him into this group where they're going to fight crime and etc. called Suicide Squad. And basically I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like, so they're testing out how good he is, and they've basically got him lined up with a load of guns in front of him, and they're kind of like, this is a risk, but we're going to have to do it anyway. You'll have to find the scene after this, and they play by Kanye. They play Black Skinhead, and they have that music in the background as he's just like absolutely tearing up this like basically like this firing range outside, and it's so cool. And it's like the build up of the song coming in, him doing that, and I'm like, as soon as I start hearing that music, I'm like, right, I'm in. So I've got a few bits like that where if I need a fallback, that's what I'll go to, but sometimes it'll just be what comes on my playlist. I
think that's also something you picked up from Atomic Habits when you sort of create this environment that puts you in a certain sympathetic state or nervous system state, right?
Absolutely, yeah, because you need it at that stage. And I'm a very parasympathetically driven man. Like I'm chilled out most of the day, so I need triggers like to get me into that state sometimes. And music's always a big one. I'll put my straps on a little bit too tight to start with, so they actually like hurt a little bit, and then be like, right, I'm in now.
Actually, intentionally?
Yeah. It's not. I'm not. Maybe I'm some kind of like sadist, but just like a little bit too tight. So it's like, right, I'll sometimes move the bar forwards and backwards to make a bit of a crash, just to kind of like get me going a little bit, and then I'll start.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think these rituals are important. I'm a little bit autistic as well, so I listen to the exact 40 seconds of the exact same song before a top set or during a top set.
Which
and
song?
I do like...
Which song?
It's a Wardruna song. It's a little bit weird. Anyway, habit you're proud of being consistent with.
Do you mean, hang on, I just need a bit of context. Do you mean now, or do you mean in general?
Whichever you prefer.
So now, being up early, I'm always a morning person, but my lifestyle allows me to get up early. I'm back at a point of being good at getting up and about first thing, whether it's
But
moving.
you are a morning person.
Yes, yeah, always have been. But I always function a lot better when I've got up in the morning. Like even if it's just the mental side of things, or like if I get up and I've got up later than I should have done, I just feel behind for the whole day. And the person I aspire to be like is the kind of person that gets up early and cracks on with the day. So no, that's my one at the minute.
A thing under $100 that you cannot live without.
My Lumi lamp, which actually fits in quite nicely with that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I take it away with me when we go away. And not for like 2 days, but like if like I brought it out here and fit it into a suitcase. Like I'd leave a pair of trousers behind and bring it with me.
Like on a holiday?
Not for like a week's holiday, no. But like if we were going somewhere like we went back to the UK, we come back to the UK in summer for like a few weeks, I'll bring it with me. Because it does a few things. Obviously, it means that I can know the time if I wake up. I don't sleep with my phone anywhere near me. I've not had my phone in my room, either on work or personal, for 5 years. And I don't like having my phone in my room because I end up not going on it at night, but I get up in the morning and I check it. I'd rather get up and move around first. And obviously it's the light, so it wakes you up in the mornings too. So yeah, that's my one.
Yeah, so for the listener, it's a sort of alarm lamp that gradually brightens up the room to your wake up time. And if anyone were to ask me the same question, my answer would have been the Lumi lamp as well. I'm not a morning person, so for me it's a bit more important because otherwise I'm miserable, and it just makes waking up, especially in the winter in the UK, so much easier.
Yeah, and also I find depending where you are in terms of stages of sleep, if 10 minutes before your alarm you're at a point where you could wake up, I wake up, which is really nice.
Yeah.
I think this morning it was 5:30. I think I woke up a couple of minutes beforehand because I was ready to wake up and I felt a lot better, rather than like I've had those times of waking up and my phone's just shouting at me and I'm like, oh, and then you turn it off. Oh, I've got a WhatsApp. Oh, I'll read that, and then suddenly you're in bed for half an hour. You know, well,
yeah. So you wake up when you're like coming out of a sleep cycle anyway, and not going into another one 10 minutes before having to wake up and then being interrupted by an alarm.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your favorite quote?
How you do anything is how you do everything. It's a bit cliche, and I don't really care, but genuinely, like there are a lot of little things, like habitual things that I'll do through the day that I do just because it like makes me do other things as well, like little stupid things. Like my desk will always look nice in a certain way. Like I'll take bits out of my office in here now so it looks like a little bit cleaner, like little things like that, because how this looks reflects how my day looks, type thing. Yeah, I've always loved that. I don't know when I first heard it, but I've always loved it, and I can translate it across my life directly. So get it tattooed on my head.
What's a pivotal life-defining moment?
When I was on the train to my job interview for the place we worked at in London, and I nearly got off the train because I was so nervous. I felt so sick. Like honestly, like I nearly didn't go to the interview because I was absolutely shitting myself. And then I was like, I'm going to be sick on the train. Like, what's going to happen? Da, 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 da. So I very nearly didn't go. And obviously that interview, which luckily I talked my way into the job, has led to the cascade effect of where I am now.
Which interview was that? Because we had a few. We had like one practical and two verbal. Which one was that?
This was first theory. So when I sat down.
So the very first.
Yeah. It's the first time going into the gym, first time like being in that environment, getting my programming just torn apart, which I thought was quite good. But it's always the way, isn't it? Again, it's a bit cliche, but like those moments that you don't want to do, you get the most from afterwards. I think about it sometimes, like if I hadn't have gone, like I'd taken the easy choice, like where I'd be now, like everything kind of happens and just falls into place because of it. So
what were you so nervous about?
I don't even know. I honestly don't even know, because I think it was a big thing in my head to be going to it. Like this is the job that I'd wanted for 12, 18 months beforehand. It was like the pressure of that, the nerves of like knowing who was going to be interviewing me, the people I respected, being in the gym for the first time. Can I find the gym? Like all those extra bits. It was just all built together. And it was a big thing for me, like I said, just having the interview in the first place. I'd moved to London for the interview. I didn't have the job at that point, but I'd already moved. So
wow.
I was like, well, better go well. And luckily, got through the train journey, got through the tube journey, got to the gym in my suit. And here we are now, 8 years later.
Crazy. I'm not sure if you know that before I applied, I never trained anyone. Like I had zero experience. So when we were in the practical interview and I had to train Reed and I had no idea what I was doing. And we had the 2 leg curls back to back, right? And I was doing something on the leg curl with him and he was just like doing the exercise. I'm like, what am I doing? And then Christian Mansing was standing at the other one training a client. He started poking the client's hamstring. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. And from there on, I just started copying everything Christian did.
I'll be like, he's done that. I'm going to do the same thing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a miracle. I don't know how I made it into that place. Anyway.
I said, here we are. Here we are. Many years down the line.
Favorite cuisine other than Yorkshire pudding?
Other than Yorkshire puddings, yes. The second favourite cuisine is Italian. Always will be. I'm such a sucker for Italian food.
No.
Don't hit me with that, yeah? Just because you go to fancy restaurants.
No, but like, what is Italian? Pizza, pasta, done.
Good, it is. But go to Italy and then go to Sainsbury's and get a pizza out the freezer. There's going to be a difference between the two.
Okay.
So I've never seen you look so disappointed. What's yours then? Go on, what's yours? I bet yours will be like Slovakian or something obscene.
It's actually Jamaican.
Fair. Yeah, no, fair play. You've done me there. I was really hoping you were something really weird.
I'm glad we can be disappointed together now. A day in your life, 5 years from now. Not like predicting it, but how you would like it to look.
Yes, and I love this question because, sorry, I've made this the least quickfire questions ever. I can never answer things quickly, but because I think about this, because I think about our life now, and I'm like, well, we actually have control of most of our days. Like, why am I not choosing to run my day as I'd like to? So 5 years' time, we'll be back in the UK. I'll get up, we'll have a gym of some kind of gym kit at home, get up, train in the morning first thing, have a coffee, like start the day at work. I'm always better at working in the morning, so work probably until lunchtime, and then probably do some work through mid-afternoon and then chill out in the evening. By that point, more than likely, we'll have a family, we'll have a dog. So like when I say like work through the morning and work in the afternoon, it's like still being present for like breakfast with the kids and doing all these extra bits and the benefits of being able to work from home. And then George and I have some chill time in the evening before we go to bed. That's kind of what I picture. I've kind of got a picture of like life at some point in the future where I'm flipping loving everything that we have now, but also like, there's that excitement to look forward to in 5 years as well. And yeah, the big one for me is, I said, having a gym in the garage or something I can do in the garage so I can train there. I said, that's why running was appealing out here, because I can just get up and do it. Like rather than having to get even just a 10-minute bus to the gym, it's just like, I'd just rather do it there and then. Nice coffee machine, nice food, sunrise and sunset, like these sorts of little things. So yeah.
Can we agree James Sutton's gym is like the dream home gym?
I trained at his place in lockdown because he had a previous one that had some of that kit. I was like, this is wild. I'd live here. I think it was his old apartment. It had all the kit that he has, a kitchen, a toilet and a bedroom. And I was like, mate, you don't need anything else. I don't know why you're building a very nice looking bungalow, to be fair to him. I don't know why you're building that. I'd live here.
Yeah. A thought constantly on your mind nowadays.
Am I doing enough?
That ties back in with your post that you did about elevating your standards. Does it?
Yeah, completely. It's that whole thing of, it sounds like a really simple quote, but it's the more you do, the more you can do. And I look back at like me from 2-3 years ago, and the level I'm operating at now for different things is so much higher. But it's also like, yeah, but what's next? Like what takes me to that next point? And this again comes from like working alongside and underneath Cal for the last 7 years. He's always been that person to chase, where again, for everything, like his standing in the industry, his knowledge, his everything that he does day to day, like how do I emulate that? And if I'm always 2-3 years behind him, sweet, like I'm damn happy with that. So yeah, it's not, I try not to let it become like a negative, like all-encompassing thing of I'm not doing enough, but it's like, am I doing enough today to get to where I want to be? Like I'll show you, I have a little notebook where I write each morning my to-do list. I don't do this every day, but I'll sometimes journal in there and like things I'm grateful for, but I'll also sometimes write like a little reminder for myself for the day. So it's like thinking about that future version of me, like, right, what am I going to think about today that's going to help to build that?
What is that future version of you?
So sorry, that one in 5 years. So that 5-year picture of the life that I want to have at some point in the future, which I think will come around at some point. I said the kind of life back in England.
Sorry, but how you describe that life, it's not like if you don't change anything, you wouldn't get there right now. So what is it that you think you need to grow in order to?
So for me, it's I think if I stayed in the same place now in 5 years' time, I'd still have it. But it's as much a personal thing of having that and then being content with having it, if that makes sense. So in a similar vein to how I look back now on my physique that I got to, and I'm like, I'm damn proud of that, and I will be at 80 years' time, though I kind of see it the other way around as well, where in the future I kind of go, well, I want to get to a point where I have like the life that I would have dreamed about 10 years ago and I dream about now, because I've worked damn hard to get there and I've almost like earned it to be able to kind of relax and appreciate things at that point. Where I said, not in like a self-sacrificial way where I just burn everything for a certain amount of years and work 100 hours a week to try and fulfill this dream and then suddenly realize that it's not there because my life has changed in the meantime. But actually like, right, can I get to that stage where I'm like, right, I'm proud of what I've done here. Work's going as well as it ever could do, business as well as it could do, like we're family-wise set up for life, whatever it might be. So it's now, what can I do to get to that point and continue?
So do you mind sharing some of the things that some like action steps that you're taking to level up?
Of course. So I have a few things. So one of them is training, making sure that I'm still like leading the way from that side of things. I don't document as much my own training anymore, purely because it's not quite as exciting. And naturally, over the last 12 months, I've had a bit of an identity shift of going from Big Al to now doing some different things. Second one is my own personal development stuff. So being aware of my life now and what I have in my life now and how that's going to frame my future. Because in the past, I got lost in that I will be happy when I get to X point, which just means that I was unhappy at the time beforehand because I'm putting too much success in the future that the present didn't really matter. So kind of find that sweet spot in both. Work-wise, continuing to develop, obviously, my own coaching brand within Procoach and Procoach itself. The ICM, becoming a better educator, becoming a better speaker, a better presenter, becoming more clear with how I speak. Coaching skill set coming up. There's quite a few things kind of on a list that I'm like, right, they're good, but I can make them better. Like even speaking on here, like even on podcasts, like I want to make sure I come across in the right way and kind of like people see the version of me, which I actually am, rather than kind of being like, oh, it's a whatever it might be that they think type thing as well. So it's a few different things coming together.
So on the self-development front, am I understanding it correctly? It's mostly like gratitude and stuff?
A huge amount at the minute, yeah. I've never been into gratitude journaling before. I've never been very good at it. So I use it now to keep me grounded and keep me in the moment with things. Especially being out here, like it'd be very easy to, if we do 2.5 years out here, for that to just pass and not realize that we're even here. Like I got to wake up this morning, go for a walk at 6 o'clock, get a coffee from coffee shop downstairs. There's a really nice dude in there that I went in there for the first time last week, was chatting away to him. He wished me happy Chinese New Year because he's Indonesian and part Chinese, like gave me a biscuit, like all this extra stuff and to go for a walk. And I'm like, I wouldn't do that in England because I couldn't. So it's like actually appreciating being able to do that because by the time I got home, it would have still been dark and raining type thing.
And how else do you do this other than the journaling and just trying to be more mindful of these like everyday occasions?
So in a similar vein to journaling, but slightly different, I'll always write things down. I try and write down things that have happened, and I'll try and take more photos so I can capture memories of actually being like, this is what's happened in my life. Because it's one of those funny ones. Like my default mechanism is just to like head down, disappear from the world, just do things myself. Like that's why I like dieting over winter, because it's like, well, no one else is going to do this now. I can be that weirdo where it's like just me type thing. But I also know that's incredibly unhealthy, and also that's not my future. So by being more present for loved ones, George, obviously the two of us out here, like our friends out here, my family back home, like all those different things, that puts me in a better place, like not necessarily emotionally, but kind of me as a human being, I'm then in a more settled place. And I then feel if I've got that, I can then push more of myself into other areas. So I balance a lot of things in a minute with coaching. I mentor coaches one-to-one, the ICM and building that business. Like there's so many things going on. But I also know for me, like if I did just fully disappear for 6 months and built all those, I then actually wouldn't be any happier 6 months down the line, or I wouldn't have anyone else on that journey with me. I wouldn't be happy and content. I just have built these things for the sake of it. So it's kind of trying to get that balance across both those areas where me as a human is developing, which naturally means the business is developed, but also at the same time, letting those things kind of push and pull together.
It's not easy. Just circling back to your not documenting your training anymore. You documenting it is one of my favorite things. Like so many people talk about training, but how you talk about it is always a little bit different. Like you can just tell that you love it. And yeah, I wish you did more of it.
I am starting to do more now because I've been told to. Like, okay. And also, because I'm at a point now where I had some injuries last year, so my training was a little bit boring. Like fixing some stuff. Now I can actually let the shackles off and train again. Now it's not like showing me doing it. How do you define
boring, or how is it not boring now versus last year?
So I'm always going to be a bro at heart. Like, give me, as I said, that favorite point of a lift. Like I'm going to be the kind of person where I get captured by training in my head properly because that's my background. Like I don't like having to take 30 minutes to do prep work before a deadlift. I'd rather be at a point where my body can, do a little bit of stuff to get me ready for it, but it's not distracting me beforehand because I get bored, mate. Like if I have to do a load of stuff, and again, it was necessary last year to get me to a point where my hips functioning better and my body could actually move because I was an absolute blob at 120 that couldn't rotate or anything like that. But I don't want to do all that stuff before I go into a session because it takes my love from training away. But now, because it's a case of I can be like, right, I can just do the things I want to do. Again, not think too much and just train. Now I'm like, right, I can show this off now. Like people don't want to see me doing a kettlebell windmill. They don't want to see me doing all these extra bits, which again are useful, and I still do them sometimes if I need to, like on a particular day to get my body moving. But I don't find that enjoyable to watch, so I'm not going to show it off at the same time. But putting X amount of plates onto an RDL or ripping a bent over row or whatever it might be, that's the stuff that I want to show because that's stuff that I actually enjoy more. And it's got more passion behind it.
King of the posterior chain.
That's all it's going to be. That's why every time I actually meet someone for the first time, I just reverse. I go in backwards. They can see my back first. They can't see my little chest. They can see my back first. It just joins the conversation. It traps in.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find you?
No, mate, it's been a pleasure. So they can find me personally on Instagram, Alex_Team Procoach. I also am co-founder with Cal and Ryan of the ICM Education, so the Institute of Coaching Mastery, which is just at the ICM Education on Instagram as well. We've got websites for both. Obviously, Instagram is typically the most important one. So anyone who's like things, want to follow me, just hip hinging for the next year, they can follow things on there. And that's it, mate. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.